Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Chatter with Coach, where this week I'm going to be talking about the importance of backing yourself. And this is having the confidence to start something. I mean, we're going to be focusing on fitness here, but it applies to a lot of things in life. You know, to apply for that job, to ask that girl or guy out. You know, there are all sorts of times in life where you just need to have to go, right, you know, I am going to go against what I might, what my instincts might be telling me. I'm just going to put blind faith in myself. And for some people, that can be really difficult. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, yes, I could never put myself in that position, okay, this is for you, okay? This episode is for you to help you to understand that you have to back yourself because you have no choice. If you want to be the best version of yourself, if you really want to achieve something, if you want to lose that weight, if you want to get strong, if you want to finish that event, whatever fitness goal it is that you have, whatever your goals are, that you need to believe that you can do them. And because the theme that I'm going to come back to time and time again is because nobody else is going to believe in you for you. Okay, you have to be the one to stand up and go, this is my time. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here is that this video is aimed at adults, adults who are sort of struggling somewhat with their motivation. A lot of children, they get forced into sports that they may really want to do, or that at the bottom of their heart, really, they don't really want to do it, but they're doing it for the sake of their parents. I'm going to check my microphone is on. There we go. And the microphone is actually running low on battery. So I charged it up for about 90 minutes. That should do it. But if the audio does drop out, I do apologise. And it will revert to the iPhone microphone. But yeah, a lot of kids get forced into sport they may or may not want to do. And the real downside of this, of them being sort of strong-armed into this, is that they then lose the love of the sport that they're doing. Because the coach, the parent, whoever it is pushing them into doing this. So I'm not covering that. That is a very different topic that I definitely have some feelings about. But today, I'm going to be talking about people who they don't have anyone cheering for them. They don't have anyone who's really behind them, pushing them. You know, once we get over the age of 18, more or less, you know, partly it's due to the nature of our relationships with people, partly it's due to simply sort of a level of like respect and trusting people to make their own decisions. We don't normally have people behind us pushing us, saying, you know what, you should definitely sign up for that, you can definitely do this. Yeah, coming back to the key point is that nobody is going to tell me, you know, if we go back to myself before I started in sort of endurance sport, nobody's going to come up to me and say, you know what, Simon, I think you should do a marathon. That is a really weird thing to say to somebody. You know, because, well, what makes you think that? That's really weird? And we get a bit defensive in some ways. You know, it might be sort of nice, a compliment. Oh, like, thank you. You think that I've got what it takes to complete a marathon? The reality is, people just don't really come out with those things. Now, if somebody, say, was running their first 5K, then their partner or other family member, close friend, colleague could say, you know what, I can see you running a marathon one day. I can see you really enjoying that. That's not weird. But when it comes to that first step, and especially if somebody is wanting to lose a bit of weight, who in their right mind would say, you know what, I think you can stand to lose some weight and I know you can do it. Like, weird, like just feel a bit dirty for saying that. It has to come from within, and you have to be that person who is inspired by something. Now, whatever it is that you're inspired by, I'm not sure, but I'm going to come back to the example throughout this episode to avoid me sort of tripping over my words and that. I'm going to come back to the idea of a marathon, because those of you who watched last week's video will know that for me, you know, the actual performance, actually achieving things rather than going on a weight loss journey is far more interesting, at least to myself. So I really want you to sort of to say, you know, to have a target, to have a goal, an event to work towards. And we'll get into all that in a little bit of time. But yeah, essentially we really want to make sure that, you know, at least that spark, that initial thought comes from within. And it could be that we go home And we say to our other half, our parents, our children, whoever it might be, whoever's in our closest circle, could be friends, say, you know what, ever since we went into town to watch the London Marathon, like, I wonder whether I could do something like that. And I'm thinking about it. And if you have a good partner, friend, family member, they will hopefully go, you know what, I think you can do it. Like, I believe in you. And you've then got somebody who is behind you when you do it, but you still have to have the courage to not only think that, but to vocalize that. And it can be somewhat kind of humiliating in a way. Or at least you're worried, I should say, that you'd be humiliated. That if you said to somebody, I think I'll do a marathon, that they might laugh at you. And this is very, very rarely the case. You know, I mean, I can't think of anyone I've ever seen or known who's had that reaction. A lot of times people just suspect you for having the minerals to go, you know what, I think I can do this. But we all know there was a big difference between having a conversation and doing something. I know plenty of people who are always talking, oh, you know what, I'm going to do that half marathon, I'm going to sign up with you, I'm going to download your plans, and I'm going to do this event. I've heard it 1,000 times before, and they never do anything. Because actually, you know, you have to have that thought, then you have to vocalize it. Hopefully, I'm pretty certain you get some support, and then you actually need to put your trainers on and get out the door. But this is a journey. This is something that we have to go through a series of stages ourselves to be able to kind of to come to the conclusion, to come to the decision. If you know what, yeah, I really think I can do this. And people, they'll tend to lowball themselves. Almost, they'll talk themselves down. If somebody watched the London Marathon, they came away really inspired for 24 hours. Then they reflect back and they think, you know what, I could never run a marathon actually. I don't know what I was thinking. I remember when I would have been much, I wouldn't have been much older than sort of 10 or 11. At home, on the TV was the London Marathon. Nobody was watching it, but it was on the BBC and the coverage was on. I remember watching people run over Tower Bridge, that classic shot of the London Marathon. And I thought to myself, one day, I want to run the London Marathon. And to me, this seemed like a completely reasonable thing to say, because I was at that age, where I really, truly believed that I could do things. I mean, who has more confidence than a 4-year-old? Just walks into a room like they're the absolute dog's bollocks, and they just expect everything and everyone to work around them. They have no fear, they have no shame. They are going out to do things for themselves. Okay. Now, obviously, as you get a little bit older, this starts to sort of fade away a little bit. I mean, to an extent, sort of the education systems tend to dampen this down, but more to the point is sort of general society is us realising that maybe we can't do all these things, and it's trying a lot of these things when we're sort of 3-4 years old, ending up getting hurt or embarrassed or whatever, and gently guided by people who love us and want better for us, but why don't you try something else? But when I was 10 or 11, I still had that, I see no reason why I couldn't complete the London Marathon. Look at all of these tens of thousands of people doing it. Look at the energy. Look at all the money they're raising for charity. What a fantastic thing to do. And then I also wanted, when I was younger, actually, I wanted to be on Gladiators. A number of you may remember that, or have seen the newest series. And seeing there, I think, yes, you know what? I want to be that person who's hanging from the hoops and running up the travelator and battling with the big sticks. That seemed like a great idea to me. Then as you get a bit older, especially once you hit puberty, we become a bit self-conscious and we get older and we start to realise that the people who we see on Gladiators, they're not normal people. They are super fit people who they have on that programme. Because it makes for good TV. You can't have Derek from Accounts, who sort of hangs onto the hoops for about 5 seconds, tries to move to one and then falls off. Doesn't make for good TV, does it? They're looking for people who are going to be of sort of a comparable strength to the gladiators that they have on. Because again, just makes good TV. But I realised, you know, relatively when I sort of reached that like 15 years old, thought, yeah, those like, I don't have what it takes to be a gladiator or a contestant even. I mean, if I had really absolutely put myself behind it, could I have done? Maybe, but honestly, I don't think I really had the looks to be on that programme anyway. But the London Marathon is a much, much more achievable standard. But again, I got to that kind of age of like 16, 17, 18, other side of puberty, starting to understand how the world works a little bit. I thought to myself, you know what? I don't think I could ever do that. Like, I'm just not that kind of person. When you see what it takes for people to compete in the London Marathon, you look at the hours they put in, you look at the build of them, strength, and you start to realise just how far 26.2 miles is. And you see this whole culture, this whole world around running, and it seems super intimidating. You think, I wouldn't fit in, I wouldn't know where to start, these people are all so much fitter than I am, like it's for them, it's not for me. And that is the kind of mindset that, I mean, it's not unusual for somebody that age to have. When we are starting to feel a little bit more self-conscious about ourselves and our confidence is definitely starting to erode, we've stepped into the world of work, you know, and we started, even if it's just part-time work, and we started to understand that maybe the world doesn't work in the way we thought it would. But it's, we especially as we get older and become a bit wiser, we really do need to learn to shut those self-doubting voices out, especially once we get into our late 20s, into our 30s and beyond. You know, when you're in your early 20s, you're still discovering a lot about yourself, a lot about life. You do still have that sort of youthful bravado, but we're also still, you know, making a lot of silly choices about how much you drink on the weekends, or the kind of people we date, or all of that. Is this necessarily the time to go out and to sort of compete in these events? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the kind of that negative self-talk, it doesn't really help anyone. And can you imagine if a friend of yours said, you know what, I watched the London Marathon and it's amazing, I'm going to train for a marathon myself, I'm going to apply for London, but even though I can't get in, I just want to do a marathon. Would you say, oh, yeah, I don't think you've got it in you really, it's not for people like you? I hope you wouldn't. I really hope you'd just be like, yes, like, good on you. Even if there's a part of you thinking, I don't know if you're going to actually do it, you'd at least admire and respect them for having the minerals to put their hands up and go, I'm going to do this. So, you know, we talk ourselves down relentlessly. We're inside our heads. We're lying there in bed at night going, I can't do this. It's not for people like me. How could I ever do that? Like the people that look like me, they're not from the background that I am. It's not for people like me. We can find all these reasons. You're not good enough. You're not fit enough. You're too slow. You're too fat. You know, we can come up with all these reasons not to do it. We would never dream of mentioning to our friends. You know, like I really hope there isn't a human being on this earth who, if a friend said, I'm going to run a marathon, who would go, nah, you're too fat, it's not for you. But yet that is so common in our own heads to go, oh yeah, but nah, my legs aren't long enough really, are they? Or well, I've never been a runner before. You know, that self-doubt, that sort of overthinking, that self-doubt, it's such a negative spiral that we get ourselves into. And I can understand why that happens. Because it is so easy to find reasons not to do things. But I remember, I think it was actually my mum actually said it to me first. You know, there'll always be a reason not to do something. Whether it is to take the job, whether it's to start dating somebody, whether it's to marry someone, whether it is to buy something, you are always going to be weighing up whether it's a good idea or not. You know, you're never going to meet someone who's going to be the absolute perfect person for you. Now, everything is going to feel effortless. And at no point do you have any doubt in your mind, like, is this really right? Is this for me? So, what I thought I would do is I would talk you through my story. sort of how I really got started out. Now, I teased this a couple of weeks ago, but this is how I got started in fitness. So I'm going to paint the picture after I've had a little drink. So, 2012, I worked in the film industry, and I got a call from a producer friend of mine who said, I hadn't done many sort of jobs at this point, got in touch and said, look, somebody is supposed to be the gaffer, the head of lighting on this job, which was what I did, lighting. And they're unwell, they can't make it, and we're wondering if you can do the shoot. It's 6 weeks in London. And I was just getting started in my career. And I remember taking the call, stood in a media suite, and sort of an editing room. And this call came through, and I just said yes. Thought, I'll say yes, and I'll work out the details later. So what I will do is I'll either stay with my brother up in Hatfield, or I will find a room to rent, or maybe I'll drive there, commute. Whatever needs to happen, I am so driven to become a success in the film industry, say yes, work out the details later. So I did. And in the end, I thought the best thing to do, I looked at the costs of everything. I found a room, you wouldn't get this these days, found a room in London for £70. £70 a week. And I was earning, I think, £50 a day on that film. It was an absolute joke. Maybe a little bit more than that. But I remember thinking, right, you know what, I can do this. So I found that actually the room was in Wimbledon, because I looked at the schedule for the film, and we were doing some shooting in Wimbledon studios. And so I thought, well, London's such a huge place. Wimbledon, they got the tennis, they got Wimbledon Common, they've got the Wombles, and they got the studio nearby. I'll start there. And so I moved into this this tiny little box room in London for £70 a week, £280 a month. It's a bit of a, can you imagine that nowadays in London? I worked on that job, and the job was sort of getting towards the end, sort of 4 or 5 weeks, and because I was living in a house with a family, and there were sort of 3 rooms upstairs that were for sort of lodgers, and there was an attic and another bedroom. And they said to me, you know what, we really like you. You can stay if you want. I thought, well, it's cheap, it's in London, and this will work. So there I am. I took the job. Took the room. I thought, I'm going to stay here indefinitely. So I got some more of my gear over from back home. I thought, right, here I am, striking out on my own. But living back home, where I am now, I really wasn't happy. I don't think it's unusual for somebody of that age, kind of 21, just graduated, moved back home with their parents by default, and you feel like a caged animal. You want to go out there, you want to see the world, but you're there with your parents, and all of your childhood friends may have disappeared off, and you really are feeling you're lacking purpose. And there was an incident with a girl as well, and I was feeling very sort of rejected and downtrodden after that. And although I had this job and I was in London, I did just feel really low. My self-esteem was so low. And I spent sort of about a week after this job finished, because it's not a salaried position, it's all freelance, it's all self-employed, you just wait for the phone to ring. Thought to myself, maybe I had another job or two. I thought, I need to get out, I need to do something. Come on, Simon, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'd do something that's going to make you feel good. So I did. I thought to myself, you know what I enjoy? I enjoy swimming. So I went on the internet and I looked around for swimming pools in the area, and there was one that was just around the corner, about a 5-minute walk, perfect. But it was within a Virgin Active, and I thought, oh, that's only a membership. I thought, you know what? I'm going to inquire. So I inquired, thought maybe they'd do a swim-only membership. And I went and they did a good deal for under 23s. Or was it under 25s? I can't remember now. and it was like £35 a month or something. And I remember, had the swimming pool, had the gym, all this. It wasn't a super nice level. It wasn't sort of David Lloyd level of like, ultimate club, really high end experience. But it was still nice. It was still a good site. And I thought to myself, I could see myself doing great things here. As do a lot of people when they go to these gyms in the first place. I thought, I've got the pool, I've got the gym, I can get fit, I can improve my self-confidence. There's so much I can do here. So I thought to myself, right, so I signed the papers. So I signed the papers and the membership and all that, and I then had my gym induction, and I went through this process. And at that point, I backed myself to be a better version of myself. I didn't know what that version was going to look like. I just knew that it existed, and I was aspiring to be this better version of myself. But as time went by, without clear goals, without a process, without a plan to follow, I just had a wish. And I didn't even really have a clear idea of the kind of person I wanted to be. My attendance started sort of to decline. I was losing that bit of motivation. I had no idea what I was doing in the swimming pool. And I didn't really use the gym much, and I just kind of felt myself fall off this health and fitness sort of routine, which is quite common. But I still turned up. And one day I went up the stairs and I saw they were advertising a triathlon in the gym. And I thought to myself, I could do that. I can swim, I can cycle, I can teach myself to run. And now, I of course had that youthful bravado that you lose over time, of that, I can do that, I'll make that work. Just that that blind faith in yourself, that absolute, you're spitting in the face of like self-doubt. And again, I felt caged, I felt like I wasn't able to like show who I was, I lacked this potential. And I wanted this outlet for all of these like emotions and frustrations and like these classic feelings that a man at that age would experience. So I thought, I can do this, and this can be a fantastic outlet for me. It can be a fantastic journey that I go on. So I did, and I started training for this. I got in the pool, and as soon as I had this goal, this plan in my mind, I was so much more motivated. I wanted to teach myself front crawl. I bought triathlon magazines. I looked on the internet. Social media wasn't the sort of how it is now, really. But it really was huge, absolutely massive for me to like do the amount of research that I did on swimming, start to learn front crawl or freestyle. Cycling, I used the bikes up in the gym to start with, to just sort of get myself ready, but I knew I kind of had that fitness. And then there was running. And I started teaching myself to run on the treadmills, and I realised actually, you know what? I wouldn't say I was an absolute natural, but I think my first run was actually like 3 kilometers without stopping. And, that's not something I'd ever asked somebody to do. It was just, I thought, well, let me just run slowly and see how things go. Of course, it helps that I'm the build that I am. But also, I was just generally an active person, riding bikes around, long walks, all of this. I just moved quite a bit, and I took to running sort of fairly easily. And I had this absolute faith, absolute conviction in myself, and this obsession with becoming a triathlete. So much so that I actually decided I don't want my first race to be in a gym. I want my first race to be outside. I want to do this sort of properly, in inverted commas. There's nothing wrong with doing a triathlon in a gym. I cannot stress this enough, If that for you is a great goal, I'm not going to take away from you. It's just how I personally felt. I guess I read more, learned more about it all, and I just thought, you know what, because I'm not much of it's not like I was the kind of person who's like always been in gyms and feels good and comfortable in the gym and finds anything outside sort of threatening. I prefer being outside, and I thought, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to move outside. And so I didn't do the triathlon in the gym in the end, but I kept reading the magazines, I kept doing the research, I kept watching the videos, buying the books, I got myself a bike as well, which I'm trying to remember which kind of order that all happened in now, because I bought a bike, I think before I decided to do triathlon, which ended up then getting nicked because I was like riding it around London. And then I got something that was like a very much a just to get by, just to get around bike, and that's sort of a hybrid. That's what I got it second hand. It was this heavy old hybrid. I'm remembering now. I drove out to Purley, South London, and somebody, I won it on eBay for like 120 quid or something. I remember saying, "Oh, it's quite light." I went to go pick it up. I thought it's not light. But I sort of rode around on this hybrid, and then eventually, with about a week to go before the race, I got myself a proper like road bike, and that's kind of the story of how I found that self-belief. The fact is that I was frustrated. I was looking for an outlet for things, and a lot of people are less in a, you may well be in less of a place of frustration, and more in a place of like feeling overwhelmed, feeling tired, not being happy with how your body looks. And rather than seeing, oh, exercise, that's a great outlet, that's what I need. Instead, for you, exercise feels like super intimidating, and it feels like something that's not for you. And these are two very different sort of feelings, ways that people need to kind of to look at themselves and to go, this is this is really intimidating, but I back myself. I believe that I can totally do this with like enough time, practice, knowledge. And that knowledge part, I know I keep coming back to it, is really important, like learning the why, not just throwing yourself headlong into things, especially when things are a bit more technical. Now, I want to touch on something. A number of you may be familiar with the Dunning-Kruger curve, which essentially it displays somebody's perception of their ability. So if you think up here, down here you have somebody who's just starting out, and then as they start out, their confidence really increases fast. They learn more, they do more. I think this is great. I'm feeling really good, and then they reach what they call the Mount of Peak Stupid, and then you have a moment where your confidence plummets. And this happened to me in the film industry. I remember I was on a job, and a chap who I sort of met through Twitter, where he got me on board, and I didn't do a very good job, basically. And he just sort of like didn't even acknowledge me at the end of the day. And I was sat there like, oh dear. Like it was that moment of like, maybe I'm not as good at this job as I think I am. Now, I guess that the films that I was working on prior to that, there were sort of a lot of really quite low budget stuff where it was just a matter of like, do what you can. And I was stepping into a bit more of a professional environment. I was the only person there. And yeah, I wasn't able to, I didn't have the knots that I needed to rig a light in the right place, or to be able to wire into this 3-phase electrics. There was a huge amount that I didn't know, and I felt embarrassed at the time. But sort of his reaction, it really made me think, I'm not very good at my job. And this is a journey that nearly everyone goes on, or everyone should go on, with any kind of knowledge-based sort of exercise that they do. And the same can be true for confidence in exercise, where somebody will start out and they'll learn and they get better and they get faster, they get stronger, and then they reach this point, and then from that point they lose their confidence, they lose their motivation, whatever it is, they fall off of this peak. Now, with the Dunning-Kruger curve, it goes up sharply, then it goes down sharply, and then it goes on a steady incline for sort of the years afterwards, where you realise actually you didn't know much after all, and you then dedicate the rest of your life, career, whatever it is, to the mastery of that subject, until eventually you find yourself with a high level of confidence and competence, rather than just feeling overly confident. Same with fitness. It is really like when you fall off of that point, I think a lot of people feel humiliated, a lot of people feel embarrassed, They fall off the wagon, they fall out of the habit. It could be that they fail a race that they went into with overambitious goals. Could be they started training for a marathon. They say, oh, I'm going to do 4 hours. I know I can do 4 hours, and it took them closer to 6 or 7. And they kind of find themselves at that point where rather than like dusting themselves off and going, right, I got this wrong. I really screwed up. I made some real mistakes here. Let me find out how to fix that. A lot of people go, I'm done, and they walk away from it. I think it's a shame. The same equally if somebody, again, not that I'm a big fan of this, somebody went on this weight loss journey and they see this dramatic increase drop in their weight. And they think, this is great, I'm losing loads of weight. I've lost 3 kilos in the last week. This is great. And then their body pushes back and goes, we can't keep doing this. And they eat things they're not supposed to. They put weight back on, and their confidence in their ability to lose weight absolutely craters because they're going backwards. But the fact is, they had a calorie deficit that was way too great to start with. And they were doomed from the start with that outlook. So what we sort of point people towards, or at least I point people towards, is something called a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. And for some people, completing a marathon is a big, hairy, audacious goal. Sorry, I should rephrase that. For most people, it is a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's one of those where it scares you a little bit, and that like low-level fear is what gives them a kick up the arse and gets them out of bed on that cold winter's morning when they need to get out and train. And it's important that you have something that does actually kind of like scare you a little bit, that really does like push you. And you think this is like such a big goal. Now, I only recommend these BHAGs if you are doing some kind of performance-based goal. If you were saying, oh, I want to get 12-inch biceps, I want to lose 10 kilos, that's not such a good, big, hairy, audacious goal. Because whilst it's not such a good example, whilst it is a big goal, there's no sort of time deadline on it. It's not like an event. I'm signing up for a marathon. The marathon is in October, and I need to start training. It's more of a, we'll do it in our own time and we'll see how it goes kind of approach. And that's not really as inspiring. It's not really as interesting. And because so many things can affect muscle growth and weight loss, it's just not such a good example. And this is why I'm a really big fan of endurance sport. Or sort of, sport in general, but endurance sport especially. Because if somebody signs up and says, I'm going to do this 10k race in 6 months' time, they have to train for that race. Because they don't want to look silly. They don't want to say they didn't do it. There is a deadline. The clock is ticking. We need to move on. We need to push ourselves. And this endurance sport is just fantastic for this, because it allows us to achieve things that we wouldn't achieve if we were just looking to do them in our own time. Sometimes with Couch to 5k, people can fall down this route because there's a parkrun every weekend. Because they're sort of running 5k in their own time, and they kind of find excuses, find reasons not to do things. If you're signed up to a marathon or an Ironman triathlon, and that is in 4 months, you better bet you're getting yourself out the door. Because if you don't, then you are going to pay for that. You've paid your money, you're going to go there, you've paid for your accommodation, and you better get the training in that you need to do that. You're obviously assuming that you're not at risk of being overtrained. And once somebody has spent money, once somebody's got skin in the game because they have paid for that entry fee for their event, that is an additional motivator. It's not just sort of a gym fee, a membership fee. Oh yeah, I suppose I should go in and I should get my sort of £20 a month worth. It could be a case of, look, spent £60 on this marathon entry, and I'm sure as hell going to make sure that I'm there on the day, and I'm going to achieve this fantastic goal that I have of becoming a marathon runner. But even once we've spent our money, it's not immediate motivation. And the biggest thing that's pushing back against this, like, sense of us backing ourselves, that's stopping us from signing up to these events or even thinking about it, is society. Sorry. Oh, very rude. But my dog's been back and forth to the vets recently, and I'm being quite stressed. And I'm recording this in the middle of the afternoon, which is probably the worst time to record something. Society, will tell us that we're not good enough to achieve that goal, and it's not that there is a person. It's just this idea of society telling us that these aren't the kind of things that people who look like us do, or that people from my background do. So if you take somebody who is somebody who grew up in Brixton, very ethnic part of London, who doesn't who is black. Let's not mix our words around. Somebody who's black, grew up in Brixton, and decides that they want to take on, let's say, an ultra marathon. Okay, if you look at all of the images, if you look at all of the marketing, if you look at everything relating to ultra marathons, from product websites to sort of race results, there are very few people who aren't white and normally rich that do these events. Now, part of it can be if it's a big destination race. If you're looking at something like the Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, one of the pinnacles of ultra running, or Western States 100, these huge ultra running events. They are full of, rich white people, because that's where it is that they want to go. And why is it there aren't as many black people that do ultra marathons as opposed to the marathon, where they tend to be, just about everywhere? Nobody really knows. I saw some people discussing this on social media. I think it's one of those sort of self-fulfilling prophecies, where because there are no black role models in ultra running, black people don't feel it's for them, and so they then would be less inclined to sign up. I don't know, a few people have tried to be, this guy that I was having a discussion with online, he says, I feel like the token at every race that I attend. I thought, yeah, I can see how that sort of would feel, but he wanted to inspire more people to sign up, because at the end of the day, a marathon can be sort of 42.2 kilometers. An ultra could be 50 kilometers. It's only an extra 8k, but there's something about that extra distance there. It just kind of turns people off, and they think, you know what, no, it's not for me. And I think some people also, who are black, they feel that there can be they feel that they should be able to run fast. They feel that if they look like Usain Bolt, if they look like Kipchoge, that they don't want to be seen to be running a 4 or 5 hour marathon, because that's not what they do. They should be running fast, and that fear of sort of looking silly, almost, that fear of standing out, maybe being sort of laughed at. I mean, if you stand out visually anyway, which at a marathon, chances are there's a good chance in the amateur field that you might feel a bit like the token black guy, at certain points at least. That people, there might be a few people thinking, oh, it's unusual, shouldn't be up with the professionals. I mean, that's racist for a start, but it also it's that kind of mindset that people can get themselves into, and that also applies to people who are sort of like a certain body shape. Also applies, as I said, to the economic side of things. If somebody lives right next to somewhere that runs an ultra marathon, there's no reason that they can't do that. Do they have the funds to travel around to different corners of the globe to do all these exotic events? No, they don't. But that doesn't stop them from being able to do the sport in their own way. And even people who grew up in a family that had very little money, but now have money to spend, disposable income to spend on these things, they may still have that sense of, oh no, it's not for people like me, it's not for people who talk like me, who look like me, I'm going to stick out, I'm going to look foolish. That's really not, I mean, you are just sort of talking yourself down, and so you're trying to find reasons why it is that you shouldn't be able to do it. Instead of having that mindset of, you know what, I'm going to be the first person on my council estate to go out and do a sub-3 marathon. It's a kind of, well, no, it's not for people like us. You know, that's not the kind of thing that people like I do. And they talk themselves out of things that they could be really good at. I mean, the world's most talented marathon runner could well be sat on the sofa right now. You could be the world's most talented marathon runner, for all I know. But so many people don't chance their arm, they don't give it a go, they don't try it. And so they never find out, and that's a real shame. But equally, some people try things and expect immediate success, immediate validation. And that in itself is probably, you know, just as harmful, really. If they talk themselves up, they're going to be great, they're going to do this, they super back themselves, but they then fall short of their expectations and they lose their motivation that way. So you kind of, well, if you look at this wide variety of people, if you look at all these genetic specimens, you know, take Michael Phelps as an example. Okay, he's got massive arms. He's just built like the world's greatest swimmer. If God or any other sort of deity that you believe in or not, or if you as an individual would sit down and create the perfect swimmer, they might look a bit like Michael Phelps. But Michael Phelps's build and his ability would be for absolutely nothing if he didn't just give it a go. And now he would have started swimming when he was young. He would have been not necessarily pushed into it, but encouraged by swimming teachers. Sorry, what is it? Yeah, it's 4 o'clock, crashing. He would have been encouraged by his parents to start swim training. Learning to swim. His swim teacher would notice he's very good, encourage him to go on to a club level, and this keeps going. And I guess what people don't sort of realise about the Olympics is that if you have a young child and they show promise, they have to jump through a series of hoops, and at every hoop they risk falling. You know, so it could be apply to join a club. Oh, do you make it in? Do you not? No, you don't join a club. Or, okay, you've made it into a club. Do you get onto the team for the next meet? Do you pass or do you fail? And you go through all of this. Do you get to go to the tryouts? Did you get onto the national team? Did you get onto the Olympic squad? Did you actually manage to qualify for the Olympics? And at the end, did you win the Olympic gold in the final? And anything except Olympic gold is seen as a failure. So 99.99999, insert that. You know, people, well, young people at least, will fall short of these expectations, these grandiose dreams they have. They will have this this disappointment, because how many people at the age of sort of 8 or 9 who've joined a swimming club don't dream of one day winning Olympic gold? But again, for some people, this was just never going to happen. Some of them have no real interest in what it takes, but it doesn't stop it from being appealing. So what is it that there are probably 100 people out there who are built like Michael Phelps, who would have had supportive parents being in an environment to achieve their success. Why is it that only Michael Phelps has won as many golds as he has? Well, medals, I should say, Olympics. Discipline. So that is him being happy to wake up every day, head to the pool, and do the session he needs to. Now, if you're a professional athlete, it's a lot easier to have discipline, because it's your job. It's like if you don't turn up to work, like the phone's going to ring, you'll be like, where are you? But even in the amateur ranks, if you look at people who are winning their age group at the marathon, at the Ironman, they need to have this discipline. It's much less about watching motivational videos and hyping themselves up to go out on a run. It's more just, look, this is part of my day. This is what I do. Am I tired? Yes. Am I cold? Yes. Am I fed up? Yes. But I need to keep going, because my dream is more important to me than how I feel right now. And having that discipline is super important. They have that self-belief in themselves. Now, this self-belief is going to waver over time. I think a number of professional athletes are actually relatively prone to depression. I know quite a few high-end athletes who are... Sorry, falling asleep here. Embarrassing. I know a number. I was trying to stifle it, but I'm not doing very well. A number of professional athletes who do have these real dark moments, where it could be they're on an upward trajectory all the way through their childhood, their young career. They go into every team. They win nearly every meet they go to. They get themselves into the national squad, and then when they actually really start swimming with the sharks, then that's when they find themselves in a really tough place, because suddenly they're not winning everything. It's like somebody who gets straight A's all the way through their education, and they get to university and suddenly they're getting 2 1s. And they go, oh, like, no, this isn't what's supposed to happen. I'm the smartest. I'm supposed to get this. And there can be these real dark moments where their self-belief gets shattered, and nobody has perfect self-belief all the time. That's just not how things work. But they have enough of an underlying belief in self to be able to achieve this. They also generally have a sense of optimism. It's very rare that you meet, very top-end athletes who are pessimists. I mean, there are some out there, it has to be said. But they are generally, they choose to see the good in things and people and themselves as well. Rather than beating themselves up or then tearing themselves down, they're trying to see the brighter side in things. They're trying to, look, it's not that bad. It could be worse. I could be doing this. I should be doing this. And I can achieve my goals, and I believe I can achieve my goals because I deserve good things. All of these. And they've just got that underlying drive, and that kind of encompasses all of the above: the discipline, the self-belief, and the optimism. They all sort of turn into this drive and this ability to push on through adversity, to accept that every day isn't going to be great, but that the reward at the end means so much to them. They can just keep going. And it could be that it's that Ironman finishers medal. It could be that it's crossing that marathon finish line. It could be going to the World Championships and being one of the fastest. Okay? Whatever the reason for it is, they think this is just my purpose and this is so important to me. And this level of drive, you can't keep it up indefinitely. It would be foolish for me to expect that anyone could keep going as long as, just sort of indefinitely forever and be super inspired, super motivated throughout their entire life. That is a ridiculous standard to hold people to. But for the point of time that they are moving towards this really important goal of theirs, they are incredibly driven. And they are solutions people, they're not problem people. But equally, don't think that you need to be a competitive person to get started. You don't need to compete against anyone except yourself. It could be that, you go to a race, you go to a marathon, you go to a half marathon, you go to a cycle sportive, whatever it is that you do, an open water event. And there are other people there, and you get overtaken by the people. But if all you really care about is yourself finishing and getting that medal, which for most people is all they really should be concerned about, a lot of people get themselves in trouble and actually go slower because they get chased by other people, because they push themselves super hard. And they end up sort of shooting themselves in the foot, really. That there's a definite time to switch from that competitive instinct, but only when you're up against people you could realistically have a chance of beating anyway. If you're going to sort of find that your ego is damaged whenever you get overtaken by somebody else, then that's not going to help you. But even if you don't have the competitive bone in your body, if you do have a competitive bone in your body, there is no shame in coming last. If it is important to you that you do this race and you don't want to feel embarrassed. A lot of people are put off by the idea of coming last. I've come last in a race. It doesn't define you. The chances of you actually coming last are quite slim anyway. But somebody has to come last. And you're still doing so much better than everyone else who's sat at home going, I would sign up for that, but imagine if I came last. You're still kicking their butts. And that's a really sort of unhelpful thing that people tell themselves. But I'll touch on the fears that people have around exercise in another episode. Also worth remembering that, life isn't a race. I think that's something that we all know. Somebody who is married with kids at the age of 22 isn't going to necessarily live a happier life than somebody who achieves those things in their 30s or maybe even their early 40s. Life's not a race, and neither is fitness. If you think to yourself, I want to do the London Marathon, but I think it's going to take me 3 years to get there, that is absolutely fine. There are no issues with that whatsoever. I would much rather that somebody starts a 3-year journey and goes, look, I just need to do this. I just need to start this journey, and hopefully within 2, 3, 4 years' time, I'll achieve my goal. Because these events aren't going anywhere. They're not going to disappear. And I'd much rather that somebody starts off and backs themselves to complete a marathon within 3 years than talks themselves out of it because they can't do it in 1 year like other people. You probably have a faster time than other people who take 3 years to train for it. And you really should, when you are looking to back yourself, do research around the sport, but for the sake of empowerment and believing that you can do it. Not for the sake of, I'm going to spook myself with how hard it is, but rather a case of, okay, so what does it actually involve? What does training look like? Are there any plans out there? How many hours a week will it take? How much will it cost? So by having all that information, you are empowering yourself. You are learning more. Equally, in this research, find people who've done what you've done. If you are a newly divorced single dad and you think to yourself, I'm such a low place right now. Like, it doesn't feel like things could get much worse for me. But I think that taking on an Ironman would give me a sense of purpose. Stick into Google, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Divorced dad Ironman. See what you can come up with. Chances are there'll be dozens of stories of people just like you in that position who are sharing their stories, maybe in the hope of getting some free kit from sponsors, but they're sharing their stories to help you understand what it takes, what the journey that they went on, what it took, and be able to look at all this and go, you can do this, and you will eventually come away from that thinking, maybe I can do this after all. It seemed like such a stupid idea in my head, but at a time where I've been really knocked down and it feels like I've got a relentless kicking from everyone and anything around me. It feels like I'll be left with nothing, but I could really do this race that would change my life. And yeah, chances are, crossing that Ironman finish line would change somebody's life in that situation and turn them around. And I've coached plenty of people like that, actually, which is why it's the example that I gave. People who have suffered a real upheaval in their home life, and they're just drawn to this idea of Ironman, and they now have the time to do it, and they think, you know what, I'm going to achieve this. Next note I've got here, find a program to help you get there, or hire a coach, whether it's someone like me for triathlon, or sort of a personal trainer. I've got plenty of programs on Greyhound Fitness. I put the link down in the show notes, as well as my sort of bespoke coaching and plans that I have through Phase on Triathlon, where people can sort of really sort of get started in a way that they feel that they are on track for, because it can be so overwhelming. How do you even start training for a marathon? Do you start off by running a mile? Do you start off by running for 10 seconds? Do you start off by running 5k? What's the time frame? Oh look, it's about 6 months until my event, and I've got here a 6-month running training plan for somebody who's not even done any running before, but is preparing for a marathon. Perfect, that's what I need. And you're then taking control of this decision. You've got more skin in the game. You are empowering yourself with that program. And something that I wanted to say is that, unless you are a multiple Olympic champion, which chances are you're not, but if you are, hi, you are capable of so much more. We all are. If I look at my triathlon performance, what is it that's stopping me from winning big races? At the moment, I haven't got a huge amount of time, very busy with work. But in years gone by, what was it that was actually stopping me? What would it take for me to get onto that podium? It'd take a lot of hard work, it'd take time, might take a bit of money, but these are all things I can achieve. There is no physiological reason that I cannot achieve that. And again, I'm not talking about going and winning big professional races. I'm talking about going to a race, whether it's a local race, whether it's a national race, anything, and going out and winning. Now, I have won some small races before, just not really with much consistency. What's stopping me from being a regular on the podium? Me. I am the only thing that's getting in the way of those goals. It could be that you are someone who considers themselves to be non-athletic. What's to say that you couldn't go under 20 minutes for the 5K if you really applied yourself for those 5 or 6 years, if that was an important goal to you? I mean, the only thing that's stopping you is that part of you go, oh, I couldn't do that. Why not? Okay, it could be that that 20-minute was probably a poor example for somebody who is perhaps older, but for, finding yourself in that top kind of that top sort of 3 or 4% within your sport, what's stopping you from achieving that? The chances are nothing. I could try my hand at a variety of sports. I'm in my mid-30s. At least within my age group, I could do extremely well. Obviously, I'm never going to be at that world-class level now. But there was so much that I could achieve if it was super important to me to do so. And so you just have to, say to yourself, look, the main thing holding me back from taking on this challenge, from being this kind of person, whatever it is me or you. Yeah, it is you that is standing in your own way. It is those, I don't want to say intrusive thoughts, it's those negative thoughts. It's you putting yourself down. It is all of that, self-doubt or finding reasons not to. That is what's holding you back. And that when you can rewire your brain and when you can just trust yourself and back yourself and go, I see no reason I cannot complete this marathon. If you've had an ankle replacement and your ankle is held together with bolts, marathon might be a bad idea. But there's all sorts of things that we can achieve. Look at Paralympians, look at how they adapt to different sports. There is lots that you can achieve if you put your mind to it, if you back yourself. And you need to find something that inspires you. There's no point training for a marathon if marathons are really boring and uninspiring to you. Find something that is really going to make you feel good about yourself and that sort of motivates you, that gets you out of bed with a reasonable time frame to build yourself up to it, okay? And the sky's the limit. You can achieve so much if you put your mind to it, so much. But the difficult bit is that courage to start. It's the willingness to tie on those running shoes and go running down your road where you think people might see you and laugh at you. It is the ability to walk onto that gym floor, even if you're the kind of person who doesn't think that you belong in a gym, even though that's not the case at all. It is having the courage to buy the bike, to go out on that bike ride. It's having the courage just to start to back yourself and to go, I don't see any reason I cannot do this. Hope that was useful. Hope that was inspiring. I hope you now feel empowered to go, you know what, that thing that's always really appealed to me, whether it's that sport, that event, that goal, that version of myself that's always felt just that bit out of reach, okay? I can do it. I just need the courage to just reach that little bit, have a go and try. Will you necessarily achieve your goal? I can't promise that. What I can guarantee is that you'll never achieve any of your goals if you don't even start. Thank you again for your company. Poppy seems to have been relatively docile throughout this one. I think she's a little bit upset about the vets earlier. We did our best. But thank you once again. And I will see you all next week.